Right, welcome, sir, to DYPDC. Could you just start by telling us a little bit about your background, please?
Yes, I'm an industrial designer by training, also an engineer by training, and I'm currently at Arizona State University, where I run a program called Innovation Space. And what we do in this program is we bring together students from industrial design, graphic design, business, and engineering to work in teams. And we work on socially responsible, environmentally responsible product development. So that's my current role. And I'm interested in doing research in design as well. The space of research that is important for me is to look at how design plays an important role in culture. Objects have a culture of their own. Designers often tend to think of objects as expressions of form and function, but they are critical components of everyday life, and that's what I'm interested in studying.
What was the idea behind Innovation Space? I mean, how did that come about in the first place?
If you think of how ideas get converted into tangible objects, it's no one individual that does it. You need a group of people, you need a team, and that's how industry works. In industry, you find groups of people working together and figuring out the way to go from an idea to a product. And what we wanted to do was to introduce students to the notion of working in teams, to introduce them to the fact that no one person can do it alone. These are complex problems that need comprehensive solutions, and the only way to do that is by working in cross-functional teams or transdisciplinary teams. So that's sort of the driving force. And we want to also work with companies so we can learn from them, and in turn also have them learn from our processes. So it's sort of a two-way street where we learn from these corporations and they learn from us and from the students.
Sure. What does design mean to you? In whatever way you could explain to us.
Well, I mean, design it's a pretty broad term. I mean, it's a word that has multiple meanings, but there are a few definitions that, not my own, but a few definitions of scholars that I admire, who I rely on quite a bit. One of them is from an economist by the name of Herbert Simon, who talks about design as a course of action that converts existing situations into preferred ones. And I think that's a really wonderful way to describe what design is. Another one, which I think is really important to think about, is one from Max Bill, who was instrumental in setting up the Ulm School of Design. He talked about design as participating in the creation of a culture, from a spoon to a city. So design touches all aspects of our lives, and I think of design as a type of sense-making. You create meaning, you put material objects into this world, and I think that's what design does.
What would you say is the scope of design, particularly when it comes to India?
Well, there's a lot of conversation these days about design thinking, and design thinking essentially is taking some of the tools and processes of design and applying them to a whole range of other disciplines. And I think India has been changing very rapidly over the past few years, and some of the development is unsustainable and some of it is sustainable. I think design can play a critical role in helping us realize that we can use some of these tools and techniques and processes to guide development in more sustainable ways. So I think design brings a lot to the table. In addition to the creation of artifacts like buildings and cars and products, in addition to that, we can also introduce new ways of thinking, new ways of approaching development. And I think that's critical right now for India.
Could you tell us a little bit about your session at DYPDC today?
So I spent the morning with the first year students as part of the induction program, and we talked about a few key things. The focus of my talk today was to look at design as creating a culture of objects. By design, we create new products, we create new systems, and that is creating new cultural possibilities. So we looked at four key things. We looked at design, we looked at creation, we looked at culture, and we looked at things. And so the session was essentially introducing students to the idea of the design process and to the idea of culture and how these two are interconnected. That was kind of the primary goal.
Okay. We're also very interested in knowing about your book, Designing Things. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Sure, sure. So Designing Things is a book that looks essentially at the space of research between the world of design and the world of cultural studies. Objects are really important from a cultural perspective. Objects are not things that we use for a few hours and throw away, or a few years and throw away. They actually become embodiments of culture. And so what I've tried to do in my book is to look at objects from a cultural perspective, to understand design as a cultural act, and to explain to maybe students of design or students of anthropology or students of material culture, is that the way to think about objects is from a variety of perspectives. When you think of objects, think of how they're made, so what's the labor that goes into them. Think of their form, how they bring beauty into the world. Think of our relationship to them, which could be an emotional relationship, could be an obsessive relationship, to think of that. To think of production, how things come to be what they are. And so the book is inspired quite a bit by theory. And what I've tried to do is bring theoretical concepts from other disciplines like anthropology, like philosophy, like cultural studies, like material culture studies, into the world of design and help us understand objects from a slightly different perspective.
Right. What are your thoughts on DYPDC and what it is trying to achieve as an automobile design school?
I've had some time here looking at the curriculum that has been developed for this program, and it looks very ambitious and it looks really good. There's some incredible faculty resources that you have here. I saw a couple of the studios that were really well set up. And I think the program is ambitious, the curriculum is ambitious, it's well laid out. You are inviting quite a few people from all over the world, which will provide a good bit of perspective as well. And I'm really excited to see what comes out of the students. This is starting the second year, so it's still early. I'm really excited to see the sort of work that will come out of the program.
Lastly, what advice would you give to upcoming designers?
The one key thing I would say for young designers is that you have to be a designer and a good citizen of the world. We are at the point in time in our lives as designers, as people in this world, that we have a series of very challenging things to look at. Social issues, environmental issues, economic issues. And all of these three can be tackled by design. So I would urge design students to think beyond the material object that they create, to think of the role that object plays in the world, and to become good citizens and good stewards of the planet on which we live.
Right. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable time.
Thank you.